any questions or concerns, or thoughts, things that have come up that you want to direct the conversation towards, we can have a little bit of flexibility today. So the course is moving pretty fast. It's week 3. And this week, every single day, you have a new assignment due. So I don't know, I'm kind of curious, how long have assignments been taking everybody? Having the module, the discussion, and then the assignments. Hi, Ava, good to see you. Cool. All right. Well, that's good. Let me go ahead and jump in. I'm going to share my screen. You'll see, let's get Kara in here. There's a couple new paths on the Wonderment that you could check out. I found this one really interesting. So if you explore communities, you'll find our group, which is leadership. Oh, this seems like that's not the right one, huh? Oh, okay, well this is good for me to know. That's not the right video. There's this really funny video of this guy's talking about castrating a cow and how he had to overcome some of his fears and really come face to face with himself in learning how to do these, what we would call dirty jobs. And so again, let's see, how many, raise your hand if you have a job. No, there's a number of people who have a job. You know how to use the raise your hand function? There we go. Awesome. So yeah, your jobs can be really cool workplaces to learn leadership skills. And places to apply some of these ideas. So I've been hanging up on a high ropes course for much of the last couple days. And I learn a lot from being up there and with other guides, with other people who are helping to keep this operation safe for people. And then also with a lot of kids, and a lot of them have different elements or ways that they go about with their leadership. So soon, I'm just in the process of exporting the video, but I'll upload a couple notes from up high is what I'm calling it. So there's about 4 or 5 people that'll talk about different concepts of leadership. So if you want to continue our conversation, go ahead and go there. I also found this conversation interesting. It's a little bit different than leadership, but I think it's important in when we think about who supports us, like having resources, be not just things that you have if you're, let's say you're starting a business, but actually people. And so this is a really sweet interview with two people who are best friends, and they talk about some really awesome concepts, like having unconditional love and patience as you're traveling with other people. And then this is another one you could look at, which is Conversation Magic. She talks a lot about, she was a world debate champion, and she talks about the purpose of having a conversation where we understand someone else's point of view, even if it's triggering to you or diverged wildly from your own. And that's what I want you to reflect on here, which Ava, you have, which is really awesome. And we'll talk today about when we have conflicts with people, when we don't see eye to eye. There's different ways for us to restore and repair and kind of move through conflict in that way. So, okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna wrap up and yeah, we'll start here. So we ended last week sort of talking about this idea of ethical leadership. How do we know what's right and what is wrong? And ethical leadership potentially can be rooted in integrity. So I mentioned briefly last week the collapse of the I-35W bridge. This was in a town I lived in for 7 years. I used to bike down here, so this bridge, when it didn't have integrity, when it wasn't supported fully, when there was too much weight on it, it collapsed, and it actually killed 13 people. And there were school buses. It was in the morning when it collapsed. And so what we want to avoid when we're leaders is having a loss of integrity in that way. So I think ethics is a really great way for us to keep integrity. This morning, so one of the things I study is this practice of Ashtanga, and Ashtang just means eight in Sanskrit, and it's the 8-limb path. So if you guys know yoga, probably know it as being like a series of poses that you do, and you hold warrior one, you hold your arms out or up, right? But there's a lot of different elements of yoga, which just means to join. So yoga, you can think of joining your head and your heart, joining your head and your body, connecting your breath to the rest of your movement, or even different types of yoga, which can be like the yoga of knowledge, of learning. There's a yoga of heart yoga, which is bhakti yoga, like loving other people. And so these are the first two limbs, and they all talk about ethics. So yamas and niyamas. Here, let's see. You guys can read them. I'll go through and I'll read them, and I want to have a little mini conversation here on what ones of these resonate with you. So you might have heard of ahimsa, which is non-harming. And I like this other definition here, the practice of recognizing interconnectedness and interdependence of everything, and then responding from an empathic, caring place to every situation, encounter, or relationship. And here's Mahatma Gandhi, arguably a really amazing leader, leading by example of a way to be in life. He says it's the attribute of the soul and therefore to be practiced in everybody, in all affairs of life. It cannot be practiced in all departments. If it cannot be practiced in all departments, it has no practical value. And this is where like taking yoga off your yoga mat is pretty important. It's not just for doing the poses, right? Satya is benevolent, truthfulness, so telling the truth. Asteya is responsibility or non-stealing. And this can even, if you look at this week's notes from up high from the field, one of my co-leaders talks about stealing not just being physical objects, but you can steal people's energy too. Have you guys ever heard of energy vampires? That's what people call it. But energy vampire might be like, let's say someone's really taking a lot from you. That can be a form of stealing, or even stealing attention maybe away from the main focus of what should be going down. Brahmacharya here is unity, but I also know it as preserving your vital life force energy. And so think about like what time did everybody go to bed last night? One thing I like to do is just keeping a healthy practice for myself is going to bed at the same time. But of course, sometimes it doesn't work. Keeping your life force energy can be something like having a pretty consistent bedtime so that you're making sure you get enough sleep. I guess since it's online school, you can probably wake up whenever. So our class is at 1. Not a big deal. Aparigraha, I think, is cool. This idea of simplicity or generosity. Like your life really should be pretty simple. And out of that simplicity, you can be pretty generous. You're not caught up in your own self. And that allows you to give back externally, right? So those are your yamas. Niyamas have to do more with your internal ethics, and that's things like clarity, saukya, purity, santosha, which is contentment. So I know I've had conversations with a couple people, like oftentimes with leaders, we say, oh my gosh, are you driven? Are you driven? Are you driving towards something? And there's something really cool about taking a step back and being like, oh, I'm content. Like, even though I'm maybe ambitious, I still am like happy with where I'm at. I'm happy with what I have. I love my relationships. And I know that doesn't mean that they don't take work. And so one of the niyamas is tapas, which is discipline. So let's see, do you guys have anything that you do that takes discipline? Like, for example, My practice of Ashtanga, getting up in the morning and doing the asanas, is a discipline. And that's a sacrifice for others. I lead the class, so I open it up for everybody else to be able to do it too. So I'm curious to type in the chat, what are some ways that you show discipline? Mm-hmm. Awesome, Gabby. Yeah, keeping to deadlines is a pretty big one. Um, Svadhyaya, which is kind of a fun word, but that means self-study. So how many people have a journal where they reflect on their day? And they say like, huh, I responded to this person and I didn't really like the way that that happened, but here's how I'm going to do it next time. Or like, I'm having difficulty getting through this situation. I wonder what's really happening here. Um, that can be a really good way to have self-study, really reflecting on yourself. And this last one, Ishvara Pranayana, surrender, service to something bigger. So it's kind of a deep concept, but maybe like I know some people have really talked about wanting to be in control in some of the, and I think that oftentimes we say leaders have to be in control, but there's a part of, and this is of course out of maybe a little bit out of context, but within ethics and within life, where surrendering to what's happening can be better. Like maybe you surrender to things being a little bit chaotic, and ultimately that allows there to be more diversity or more play or stretch or fun in a situation. Okay, and awesome, Ava. Yeah, working out, making sure you are getting taking care of your body. That's really cool. Okay, so last week we talked about decision making with the Quakers. And all right, so I want to give you just, so that's another ethic. Interrupt me if I'm repeating myself, but I don't think we talked about the four agreements. Here's another kind of framework for building up your own personal ethics or integrity. Has anyone ever heard of the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz? Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah. So I took actually a really cool class. One of my friends offered, um, she offered, what did she call it? She called it, she had a fun name for it, but it was basically like karate. It wasn't karate, it was a type of martial art. Oh, she called it soul key. And what we did is every time we punched in one direction, we would think about either one of these four agreements. And that was our really cool way of like being really kinesthetic with this. So if you're kinesthetic and you want to play along with me, like every time we talk about this, you could punch, right? But one of them is being impeccable with your words. So speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. So oftentimes as leaders, you get to see a scene and you have to make judgments. So I think around the water cooler, it can be easy to start gossiping about other people. And you guys might hear this start happening if you work in a restaurant. I found restaurant cultures to be really toxic for me because everybody would start talking about each other and gossiping, and that became really hard to work in that environment. Um, at the same time, then it's really important to not take things personally. Nothing others do. Awesome. Let's see here, Gabby. What'd you say? Your word. It goes along with whatever you speak out in the world. It comes back to you. Yes, for sure. I love that concept, Gabby. I've had that play out. Like any judgment that I send out to the world, I'm like, oh gosh, that's coming back for me at some point, especially as being a teacher. When I was your age, I was really hard on my teachers. And now when when students are really holding me to my word and asking me to step up, I really feel that. I'm like, oh, this was my younger self speaking to me too. Being like, okay, step up here. And others show us a mirror. I don't want to get super deep into this, but there's this concept of your shadow self, which gets into psychology. And your shadow self is something that you maybe are more resistant to look at, but it ends up maybe making your life a little bit more difficult. And that can be things like judgments. And I can project that on others. And as I'm projecting those things, that wraps around to not taking anything personally. Because if someone, I might be really upset, right? Like, and if I'm just carrying, I find this with my dog too. If I'm kind of on edge, my dog's also on edge. And I'm a little bit projecting my discomfort, and my dog senses it, and then she's uncomfortable. But people do that in situations too. Your boss, or maybe even you think of the head of your household. My mom would always say this, and I know this plays into gender stereotypes, but she would say, when your dad comes home angry, it's not going to be a happy night at home. And that was my dad projecting his reality onto our scene. But if we had these concepts of the four agreements, I could say, oh, I'm not going to take that personally. I know that my dad had a hard day. If I'm a servant leader, maybe I think about, all right, well, what's a way where I can help my dad out and make his reality better, and that's ultimately going to help my reality too. On that note, like, you never know how people are feeling, so don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid miscommunications, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. This one's really big, so oftentimes you don't know the whole situation. Can you guys think, or if anyone wants to share an example where they made an assumption? And this is another, I don't know, my mom's coming in right now to teach you guys, but she would always tell me, don't make an ass out of you and me, and that's how you spell assumptions, right? And because when you make assumptions, you're coming to conclusions that maybe aren't accurate. They're not real. They're all stories, right? Yeah, stories. Don't judge a book by its cover. Yeah, Angelina, there are definitely like momisms, things that moms say. I love this last one. I kind of feel like all of you really adhere to this last one. Always do your best. Your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you're healthy as opposed to sick. And I come from the Midwest, and there's a big culture of, sometimes I feel a lot of shame about things, right? So it's really hard for me. I always want to do my best, and I know my best is really good, but there's certain circumstances when I'm doing too many things, when I'm sick, or when, maybe my dog needs more of my attention, maybe I'm not going to be able to do my best. And then I always come back to thinking, like, I'm doing the best I can in this moment, in these circumstances. I'm doing the best I can with what I know and the information that I have. Okay, so I hope that was helpful for you guys, those two different ways of keeping in integrity. And going back to our hybrid Ferrari example, if you have your motors all well oiled and all your belts work, and you've checked your fluid levels, how many people can drive? We know this references. Make sure not to text and drive, right? But you have to do all those things, right? You gotta pump up your tires. You got to clean off your windshield so you can see. And all of those things are going to make you build up your integrity, build up your ability to be a really strong ethical leader. Okay, so let's say we have our super fast Ferrari and we want to go somewhere far and fast. There's this phrase, right? Kill two birds with one stone. And I always find this, did I talk about this last week? I don't think we got here yet. But I find this phrase to be funny because I get it, like a hunter, maybe you want to kill two birds, but I don't, like, under ahimsa, using my yoga ethics, I don't want to kill any birds. So I think, and bring this up just so we can start thinking about efficiency, there's a lot of hustle that goes into being a leader potentially. Like, I see the people working at the guiding company Wild West Voyages, and they're moving around, they're doing it. I have a lot of friends who are entrepreneurs, and they work really hard. And then I have some other friends who hustle every day for security, like they need to go to work every day in order to make sure that their bills are paid if they have kids. These are like real life situations. So there's like different ways that you can hustle, you know, like you can really put some gumption in behind what you're doing, and that's maybe to free you up, or that's maybe to create some security. And I would argue that when you have security, you really do have a lot more freedom as well. And I like to bring up this quote from Abraham Lincoln: "If I had 8 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend 6 hours sharpening my axe." And that kind of gets to, we'll get to, okay, let's see. I want to bring up a note about plans. So you guys started making, in one of the discussions, you planned out some of your leader, like where you want to be a leader. And I think the discussion was kind of funny because it was like, well, this is where I'm going to go to college. I don't necessarily like need to promote you all to go to college. I mean, I think it's a really awesome opportunity, but there are a lot of different ways too that you can be in society. For example, I'm about to help mentor a student in videography, and his mentor basically was like, "Yeah, college is really neat and cool, but I don't ever tell any of my employers where I go to college. It's all about my portfolio. So it's really about like what you're doing versus maybe like where you did it sometimes." But there's benefits. I mean, that's a decision that you're gonna have to make, and you guys are all talking about decisions. But okay, so I want to hear from you guys. Which type of conflict style are you? Are you a goose? Do you collaborate? Are you an ostrich and you put your head in the sand to avoid a problem? Are you a dove and you accommodate other people? Are you a hawk and you compete, manipulate, threaten, or you compromise? I do remember asking this last week, so but maybe since last week, has anyone had a conflict, and did this come up? Did you think about, okay, what kind of bird am I being right now? Like, Carrera, I'd love to hear an example from you if you want to type out or say, like, where did you seek to find a peaceful solution, and how did that go for you? And was it hard? I mean, these are courageous things to do. It's not easy to be an owl. It's far easier to be an ostrich. And just put your head down and be like, oh, well, I'll deal with that later. Or I'm just going to avoid this situation.
I think for me, I definitely like the dove's like perspective on things, and I like to kind of accommodate people because I don't want somebody to feel like I was just kind of contradicting them, or if I was talking to them about an idea and we didn't agree, I would much rather just like compromise our ideas and so we can kind of get what we both want out of it.
Totally. Yeah, that's really awesome. Um, yes, looking for win-win situations, right? Like situations where everybody gets what they want. Um, yeah. Let's see. I feel like I had something else to say about this. Okay. Yeah, anyone else want to share a conflict and a resolution? Okay. So, oftentimes as a leader, you'll have to do things like restoration. There might be, like I said, a conflict that comes up within your group, and you need to do something to restore the balance. Um, I know it's becoming more popular in schools, but has anyone have any experience with peer, what is it called? Peer restoration? Peer, oh my gosh, now I'm gonna think resolution. Oh no, I'm forgetting what it's called. Basically where you have some of your peers help you sit down and have two people next to each other, and they try to see eye to eye to restore a relationship. Maybe not. Okay, and this is really big for me. I know we all live in the West. It is really hot and dry right now, right? And we're entering fire season. So it's really sad for me. There's the mountains, basically the La Salles, what we look at every single day from the Valley of Moab. How many people have been to Moab? You know, it's sometimes a cool place to vacation, and Arizona is a hop, skip, and a jump away. Nonetheless, they're on fire right now. So last Wednesday, they started burning. There was a campfire that was left unattended. And I would just like, here's my PSA, just like don't start a fire right now anywhere. Just like things that will catch. And then wind will will come and spread the fire. And fire is not a bad thing. Fire help in a more elemental, metaphysical way. Like it's drive too, right? Like fires, you have a fire basically in the engine of your car. Each one of your cells has a little tiny mini fire that's going on to help you burn the food and turn it into energy. And even ecosystems really do need fire. So the benefit of a fire in an ecosystem is it can take away all this brush and allow new life to come back afterwards. And so here's a picture of before and after a fire. And if you want to go with the fire analogy, or if you want to think about cars, there's actually like a replica of this car from Cars in Moab, which is funny. I saw this the other day. But there's some tips and tricks that I want to give you. And one of these is called getting above the line. So when you might have a reaction to something, if you're working with people, like let's say you started a math club, or you're at your church, or you're organizing a group of people to restore a park, right? You might have certain reactions come up to conflicts. I want you to we'll start below the line, and that's the time where we're in reaction, where we say, I can't. So being on the high ropes course, I have to deal with a lot of kids being like, I can't, I don't want to do it. Oftentimes a defense mechanism can be sarcasm. If you're fearful of doing something, maybe you hesitate. If you worry, you get really anxious. So think about that time in your life, and then what sensation do you feel in your body? So just take a minute, maybe you close your eyes and think about, recall a time where you felt any of those reaction feelings, guilt. Maybe someone made you feel guilty for doing something. I'm gonna go, as you guys feel that, we can stay on this slide. I'm gonna go take my dog in my room because my roommate's home. Go ahead and type it in the chat as well. Okay. How'd we do? Yeah. Okay. And so, maybe I didn't get this. There's like a certain feeling that might happen in your body where you might get like small or anxious or feel like kind of crazy. And then like when we get to this spot where we're in choice or we're above the line, we might recall times where you felt humor or wonder, trust, where you felt love or creation or responsibility. And when you consider some of those feelings or times where you felt that, what body sensations do you feel? How do you feel within your body?
I think that sometimes you can feel like lighter or just like happier, and like the room maybe is just like brighter to you, and you feel more comfortable in your body as well, and you want to like do more things and be like with everybody else in the space.
Totally. Yeah, you feel a connection too. That's awesome. Um, Super cool. Yeah, right. Neat. So thanks for sharing, Angelina. That's cool. Mm-hmm. So, in the next week or so before we meet, I want you to see if you find a situation where you can be in this spot where it's kind of a triggering moment. Maybe there's a reaction that could happen, and then can you think about getting into a place where you're in choice, where you've chosen maybe to be curious about something that made you uncomfortable, or if you were feeling like someone wasn't someone was wronging you in a certain way, can you practice forgiveness or trust that it's going to be all okay, or um, seeing something from their point of view, having empathy and seeing like how that changes within your body. I think this is kind of a cool connection then, is to talk about, have you guys ever had a gut feeling? Like oftentimes you can navigate as a leader going by, logistical, like like thinking things through and being a lot up here. But oftentimes our bodies give us cues and feedback too. Um, there's actually a really cool article that I read that was talking about what is the actual physiological reason why you might get butterflies in your stomach, like that feeling of like a little bit anxiety or like unknown. Um, and that's because we actually have the activation of the fight or flight sympathetic nervous system, which inhibits stomach activity. So you might get that like lightness or that feeling in your stomach um, from that. Yeah. So has anyone ever made a decision, like you had a gut feeling about something and that caused you to react, like to do something that you might call that like intuition, right? You had some response and that allowed you to move forward with that. Okay, cool. Well, all right, so those are a couple tools for restoration. You might need to use those as leaders, but we're gonna kind of, let's see, think about like leadership within a project. And I want to introduce this idea of having it be like baking a cake. So this came in for me. If you're trying to create a company, it's like baking a cake. You have to have all the ingredients in the right proportion. So if you're taking notes or in a journal, we'll come back to this on Thursday, and we'll start class this way. But what are all the elements you need to create a project? So you might need a vision and a mission. That's like the what. What are you doing? Team members, who's going to work with you? That's the who. Personal statement, the why. And then you might want to go out and make sure that whatever you are wanting to do, whatever your project is, really has a need in the community. And that's going to be the where. And then the how are things like budget, goals, and logs. And so I'm going to bring up, you can navigate around the wonderment in this way. If you want to create and start a project, it'll guide you through it'll guide you through these different elements of baking a cake. Um, so like title, subheading. So let's go to one. Let's see. have a lot of different ideas, right? So I have a lot of projects that are, here's one that I'm considering. Being able to take kids on adventures, I want to call it Coyote Adventures, right? And that's where I want exploration of the edge between humanity and the wilderness beyond. So it would be taking kids out into the wilderness and growing their comfort zones from there. So then maybe I call it this because that's a little nickname for my dog, Teeny O'Teeny, and she's like the little mascot. And then it'd probably happen here. And then I would describe the project and of who you are, and you can make a video to describe your project as well. Once you do that, let's see. Then it opens up these different parts. So you can edit your personal statement. You can take a community survey of 3 different people. And then you can make a timeline. So you can edit your timeline for how long you think a project might take. And you can add different tasks into this zone. Okay, and so going through this project building phase, we'll touch base on this again a little bit more on Thursday, but go ahead and feel free to do this on your own. I know all of you, I would love if we could start class on Thursday with a little bit more, like if you've thought out a way to share it with the class, one thing that maybe a project that you had that you want to see it would be, because I know a lot of you guys have some really cool projects that you're working on. And I'd love you to be able to talk about those with other people and get a little bit of feedback. Feedback's really cool. And then as you're doing that, here's another piece of advice that I got from a food truck entrepreneur who's right outside of the high ropes course, but he was like, it's all about the drive and not giving up. He said basically 9 out of 10 businesses fail. And I don't know if this is super important, but I guess he has like a spa that's pretty successful down in Las Vegas. But it got me thinking, right? Like create a list of 10 business ideas. So if you were into the entrepreneurship side of this leadership course, and you wanted to think about 10 different ideas that you had, and they can be like even maybe nonprofit ideas if you don't want to buy into that edge of it. And we'll bring those to class next Thursday. I keep forgetting we meet every Tuesday, Thursday. So look out for an email to summarize this all, but otherwise it's been great getting on the call, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys all on Thursday or talking to you tomorrow.
Bye. Have a good day.
Awesome. Thanks, Ava. Bye.